Tonight on the Unredacted Files podcast, we're shining a light on what appears to be one of the most alarming breakdowns of justice in Prince William County, Virginia. This isn't a case about guilt or innocence anymore. It's about power, misplaced priorities, and officials sworn to uphold the Constitution who may instead be working to silence those who challenge them. At the center of this storm is a man by the name Mustafa Aljazairi, a United States citizen whose constitutional and due process rights under the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and 14th Amendments have been trampled by those entrusted to protect them. From the destruction of physical evidence to psychological and physical mistreatment, the records show a disturbing pattern. Rather than pursuing truth, Prince William County, Virginia's institutions appear determined to destroy a man they simply do not like. And why is that? It's because he dares to speak out. Let's start with the evidence. Mustafa's Chrysler 300. His primary piece of physical evidence was crushed before independent experts could inspect it. The dash cam system in his vehicle that he installed, which should have recorded the full story with sound, was removed without a warrant and handled outside proper chain of custody procedures, violating both 4th Amendment protections against unreasonable seizures and Virginia's own evidence preservation laws. The tampering and alteration of that digital data undermines the right to a fair trial under the Due Process Clause of the 5th and 14th Amendments. When the state controls, edits, or destroys evidence favorable to the defense, it's not just misconduct. It's a Brady violation under Brady v. Maryland, 1963. A U.S. Supreme Court decision that requires prosecutors to disclose any evidence favorable to the accused, and failure to do so corrupts the entire proceeding. But it gets worse. While awaiting trial, Mustafa was beaten and sexually assaulted inside the jail. Acts that violate the 8th Amendment ban on cruel and unusual punishment and his basic human rights under federal statute 42 U.S. Code 1983. The same law that gives citizens the right to sue government officials who abuse their power. When he tried to report it, those responsible faced no serious accountability. Evidence, CCTV video, and medical documentation, as well as witness testimony, was met with silence. And when Mustafa's family tried to speak publicly or demand transparency, the response from Prince William County's leadership was not to investigate, but to discredit and demonize anyone that spoke out. The Commonwealth Attorney, Amy Ashworth, and her allies in law enforcement have engaged in what looks like an organized attempt to defame, intimidate, and delegitimize Mustafa's loved ones for daring to ask questions. Rather than protecting citizens from abuse, the system seems intent on punishing anyone who stands beside its chosen target. In America, the government doesn't get to pick its defendants based on personality or politics. Every person is guaranteed equal protection under the law, and every defendant is entitled to a fair trial, impartial evidence handling, and freedom from retaliation for speaking out. If those principles fail in Prince William County, They fail everywhere. So, to the prosecutors, the police chief, and those sworn to serve the public, we see what's happening. Crushing cars is not justice. Silencing victims is not accountability. And demonizing a family for demanding the truth is not law enforcement. It's corruption. The people of Virginia and the people of this country deserve better. This case is bigger than just one man. It's a test of whether constitutional rights mean anything when power goes unchecked. And as long as this podcast, the Unredacted Files podcast, exists, we'll keep asking the tough questions Prince William County simply refuses to answer. Now, today's podcast, I've organized categories of police misconduct and what Prince William County prosecutors and the police department have done in the Mustafa Aljazairi case. You know, it's very sad that this amount of misconduct can take place in one case, and for the Prince William County leadership to simply turn the other way, to turn a blind eye to what's going on in this case. I'm going to be discussing several categories, and Amar is going to go into detail on every category that I outline here. I have 19 categories, and the first one that I'll start with is that Mustafa was presumed guilty the moment police arrived on the scene. As soon as police arrived on the scene and they identified Mustafa Aljazairi as the driver of the Chrysler 300, he was already condemned guilty. And it's very clear and evident through all the body cams that we see today, thanks to Amar bringing out these body cams. We can see how police treated this case and how they tried to reverse engineer information from the scene, from the car accident. They tried to reverse engineer this case to make it match the narrative. The narrative that Mustafa was guilty no matter what. No matter what the facts show, no matter what the investigation, where the investigation leads, at the end of the line, for Prince William County Police and prosecutors, Mustafa was going to be guilty no matter what. What do I mean by that? We can see from the scene that the moment Robert Drumm arrives, Officer Casey Fines takes the lead. He approaches Robert Drumm and he already puts the narrative into play. He says, Mustafa, that this was due to drugs. Without any evidence, with no evidence, he says this is due to drugs. He tells Robert Drumm, the crash investigator, that Mustafa was on drugs. Without evidence. And from that point on, Robert Drumm says, wherever the F that guy goes, I want a blood sample. Now, from that moment, they treated Mustafa as a criminal. And remember, this is a car accident. This is before police reviewed the EDR, which is the black box in both vehicles. Before the police watched the dash camera, before they interviewed witnesses, and before they examined how this car accident happened, what took place. They didn't care. Mustafa was going to be guilty no matter what. And this early decision about guilt shows bias. It's not an honest investigation. Now, the second category is that a United States citizen who is a trauma patient was interrogated while placed under the influence by paramedics. Now, paramedics injected Mustafa with 50 mcgs of fentanyl. We know that because the paramedics report indicate that right before Mustafa gets on the helicopter, they inject him with fentanyl. And we can see how police were moving prior to Mustafa getting on the helicopter. They were trying to decide, should officers accompany Mustafa on the helicopter? And then the message came through from a paramedic, not to worry about it. He's under, which means they've injected Mustafa with fentanyl. That they induced a coma, which, by the way, when we do our research about patients with severe concussions or concussions in general, the medical policy and procedure tells us that it's contraindicated to give someone with a concussion a strong opioid like fentanyl because you cannot monitor their status. If they're deteriorating, if they're getting worse, when you inject them with fentanyl, you can no longer monitor if that person is going into brain shock, okay? If their status is getting worse. So you're not supposed to inject them with fentanyl, yet they did anyways. Was that part of the plan? I mean, it looks like it, because when Mustafa arrived at the hospital, we have an officer, Matthew Surdam, who's waiting for him. And when Mustafa wakes up in the hospital, Mustafa's asking about his loved ones. And what does Officer Matthew Surdam tells him? He tells him, Dorothy's fine, your girlfriend is fine, Empress is fine, you'll see them in a little bit. And Mustafa's anxious. He wants to see his loved ones. Where are they? Officer Surdam tells him that she's in another hospital, but that she's doing fine. Mustafa says, can I call her? He says, listen, man, just relax. Don't move. The more you move, the more you're going to be in pain. So just relax. We're taking care of everything for you. And this goes on for 3 hours. For 3 hours, they tell Mustafa, your family is okay. And then they question Mustafa. Who was in the car with you? What's going on? How did this accident happen? Okay, Mustafa tells them. I mean, he's under the assumption that his family is doing okay. But in reality, his family was dead. And the police were toying with him to inject someone with fentanyl and to tell them your family is doing well. You're going to see them in a little bit. And by the way, we have a nurse, Heather Ledoux, who allowed this abuse to take place under her watch. That is her trauma patient. That's her patient. She's supposed to be advocating for her patient, ensuring that the patient gets priority care. But instead, because it's a Mustafa, and because he was condemned guilty from the beginning, it's okay to abuse Mustafa. It's okay to interrogate Mustafa. And the nurse, she took part in that interrogation. She took part in that abuse. And it's safe to say that nurse is no longer at that hospital. She's been fired. But nonetheless, the damage has been done. Now, police wanted to follow this narrative of Mustafa being impaired, that he was under the influence, and they pursued that very hard. We can see from the warrants that were issued initially that they were all DUI warrants. And when Chad Mason arrived at the hospital, along with Matthew Surdam, they were attempting to get Mustafa's blood. And this gives you a glimpse into the mindset of those officers in that hospital room. They were toying with him because Chad Mason tells Mustafa, he's giving him the impression that, do we have your consent for a blood draw? And Mustafa, I mean, someone who has a concussion, someone who doesn't know what's going on. All he knows at that time is that his family is doing well. His family is being taken care of. They ask him, do you consent to a blood draw? And Mustafa, I mean, fearing from COVID, he thinks COVID is still around. He says, I mean, do I have to? And Chad Mason, toying with Mustafa, already has the form for a warrant for Mustafa's blood. Now, they end up getting Mustafa's blood, and the results show no impairment, no alcohol, no drugs, and the narrative for the police failed at that moment. They couldn't pursue the impaired, the DUI. So what do? They have to reverse engineer the facts. They have to reverse engineer this case, this investigation, because Mustafa has to be guilty of something. If it's not impairment, it's got to be something else. So what do? They come up with this narrative that he did it intentionally. I mean, based on what? You haven't looked at the black box of the car. You haven't examined the scene. You haven't scanned the vehicles. You haven't talked to witnesses. You haven't really done anything in this case. Yet somehow Mustafa was going to be guilty. No matter what, he was going to be guilty. So what does Drumm do? Drumm goes to a magistrate, which takes me to my third category. Drumm goes to a magistrate, and he tells the magistrate, under a sworn affidavit, he says that he spoke to Mustafa at the scene, something that never happened. And his affidavit to the magistrate states he interviewed Mustafa and that Mustafa was out of it. Now remember, this is prior to the blood work coming back clean. Robert Drumm goes to a magistrate and he tells him that he personally interviewed Mustafa on the scene. I mean, just imagine that. An officer who's been there for 20 years goes to a magistrate and tells the magistrate judge, I spoke to this person and these are the facts. These are my findings. This is my probable cause. I'm taking this person's freedom away. And I'm swearing to my affidavit. I mean, the magistrate judge issued that warrant. The judge says, yeah, take that man's freedom away. Based on the facts that you're giving me, based on your sworn affidavit, take that man's freedom away. And they did. They arrested Mustafa. Based on Drumm's false affidavit. He never made contact with Mustafa. Never made contact with Mustafa on the scene. But he swore an oath to that affidavit that he made contact with Mustafa and that Mustafa was impaired, that he was out of it. Now, Amar filed a internal affairs complaint to Prince William County Police. And Chief Newsham, Chief Peter Newsham, sends us a letter. And he says he acknowledged the complaint. They've investigated this claim that Robert Drumm had violated department policy. I mean, at the time, Amar's complaint was regarding Mustafa's statements from a phone call with Drumm, where Robert Drumm completely changed Mustafa's statements And a warrant was issued based on that lie. Now, after getting the file, we find out that Robert Drumm claimed sworn affidavit that he spoke to Mustafa on the scene. And that never happened. So Chief Newsham tells us in a letter that, yes, Robert Drumm violated department policy. Okay, and then a spokesperson from the police department, as well as the Commonwealth attorney, they go on the news and what do they tell us? They say that the minor policy violations are not going to have any effect on this case and the moving forward of this case. So you want to tell me that an officer of 20 years, the primary investigator on this case, lied to a magistrate judge about speaking to the defendant, lied about it, flat out lied, never made contact, and he swore to a magistrate judge that I spoke to this person. I mean, that's not a mistake. You don't accidentally go to a judge and say, Your Honor, I spoke to this person and these are the facts. This is what they told me. That's not a mistake. That's intentional. That is intentional. And that's not a minor violation. I mean, that's the basis of this whole case. The entire case is built on the fact that Robert Drumm is claiming Mustafa said that he was arguing in the car. When Robert Drumm never spoke to Mustafa to begin with. So rather than Prince William County Police and prosecutor do the right thing, they dig themselves even deeper. All in the name of getting Mustafa. They have to get Mustafa no matter what. Now, we move forward to Mustafa's dash camera. What do we know about Mustafa's dash camera? Now, prosecutors today, almost 3 years into Mustafa's custody, they want to claim that there's no audio to this dash camera. Now, we know from Officer Chad Mason's testimony from October 31st, 2024, in a motion to dismiss, he admits that he took the dash cam without a warrant, that he manipulated the files, and thanks to Omar again for giving us the evidence.com logs, we can see that Chad Mason was on that dash cam for nearly 4 hours. 4 hours sitting there manipulating files from Mustafa's dash cam, somewhere he had no business of being. Because he admits he's not digital forensics. He admits he violated chain of custody. And he admits that he took that dash cam when it wasn't his job. I mean, you want to tell us that Robert Drumm lies to a judge, violating department policy? Chad Mason is taking Mustafa's dash cam without a warrant, and he's also violating department policy. You want to tell me that's normal? That officers are just acting on their own? They're no longer following department policy? They're no longer following policy and procedure? And the chief of police wants to tell us, oh, they're just minor violations. The Commonwealth attorney, Amy Ashworth, says these are just minor. I don't understand what's minor about an officer taking evidence and tampering with it. For 4 hours, he sat on those files. He was manipulating those files for 4 hours. And we see it from evidence.com logs. And nowhere in his notes did he put that there's no audio. Nowhere in Robert Drumm's notes do they ever say there's no audio. Never mentioned. I mean, we're looking at over 3,000 pages of police report, discovery material, and not a single officer says, I watched this dash cam and there was no audio. Nobody said it. On an alleged double homicide, not a single officer mentioned that the dash cam, the most crucial piece of evidence that should have captured this whole entire event on both video and audio, did not capture audio. No one noted that. In all their years of experience, no one thought of, hey, let me just note this down. I'm looking at a video for 4 hours and there's no audio. Instead, what do we see? We see Robert Drumm acknowledging that Dorothy was screaming. How do you know she was screaming if there's no audio? How do you know? We see a body cam where Robert Drumm is making contact with Rexing, the dash cam company. And what is Robert Drumm's primary question to Rexing? It's not, hey, can you help us figure out the audio to this thing? No, that's not the question he's asking. He's asking whether anybody outside can gain access to this footage. That's his question. Can the family log into a cloud and obtain this dash cam footage? Is it available on a cloud somewhere? That's his primary question. I mean, he's sitting there for almost 8 minutes talking to Rexing. And not only that, but he's upset. He tells Rexing that he's upset that there's this, unfortunately, this legal system that they have to follow. I mean, apparently, the justice system has rules. And Robert Drumm is not happy about those rules. He's not happy that you have to follow policy and procedure. He's not happy that if someone is accused of a crime, they have to go through trial, that there is due process. He's not happy about that. And he makes that very well known to Rexing. But his primary concern is, can someone get this footage if they log into the cloud? And you'll be surprised later on of what you can get from a cloud. Now, Kathy Zymus on October 31st confirms what Chad Mason testified to. He had no business handling that dash camera. Yet the government now is claiming there is no audio, despite Catherine Zymus on a sealed report telling us that this dash cam was in fact recording audio. I mean, how is that so? Kathy Zymus tells us that there is audio, that there is an audio track. Yet the government's theory till this day is that there's no audio. I mean, prosecutor Sarah Sammy initially said that Dorothy said, no Empress is in the car. She was basing that on a lip reader that she got. But now today, now that the lip reader has been kicked off the case by the judge, Sarah Sammy, in her motion, in her filing, says that Dorothy screamed no. And she puts it in quotes. My question to the prosecutor is, if you claim there's no audio, how do you know? How do you know what Dorothy said? If you're alleging there's no audio, how can Robert Drumm tell us that Dorothy was screaming if he's alleging there's no audio? Now, you know, Chad Mason has a lot of problems. And one of the bigger problems he's facing, other than violating department policy, other than tampering with the most crucial piece of evidence, other than cutting the wire to the dash camera, when he wrote up the warrant for the dash camera, he made it so specific to April 5th. Now, April 5th, 2023 was the day of the accident. And Chad Mason wrote a warrant that is so narrow to April 5th I mean, if you're alleging that Mustafa was abusive, that he was a reckless driver, why would you narrow your search down to 1 day? Why would you only look at April 5th? Why not look at all footage from the dash camera? But then again, we go back to my initial comment, and that is that the Prince William County Police and prosecutor are trying to reverse engineer this evidence, tailor it so much so that it has to match the narrative. Anything outside of what they've tailored is just not going to work. So if you include all of the footage from the dash camera, it's going to make the prosecutor look stupid, because clearly there's other things that Prosecutor Sammy, Prince William County Police, don't want to enter into this case. Now, if we accept the April 5th, 2023 for the warrant of the dash camera, we have to look at how this warrant was executed. Now, something very, very important happened on April 5th, 2023 in the early AM hours. And that was Mustafa was driving around right after midnight with Empress. He was looking to buy her favorite cookies. And he was driving from one convenience store to the next, one convenience store to the next, looking for her favorite cookies. Now, that was April 5th. And the real question is, where is that footage? Why did Chad Mason stop at 1 p.m.? He started from the time of the accident at 6:36, and he worked his way back, and he stopped at 1 p.m. Why stop at 1 p.m.? Why not continue? And the truth of the matter is, he did not like what he saw. It doesn't fit the narrative. So what does he do? He's just going to exclude it. I mean, a judge issued that warrant. And the warrant was for April 5th, all videos of April 5th. Now, how do we know there's more footage to April 5th than what Chad Mason tells us, than what he put on evidence.com? Well, we have the footage. We have more than what evidence.com shows. And we know for a fact that Chad Mason did not execute that warrant as it was signed off by a judge. Now, the next section I'm going to talk about, next category, is that you have Prince William County Police, like Robert Drumm, Rob Davis, actively coaching and manufacturing probable cause. Actively coaching alleged witnesses. I mean, Rob Davis, on his own body cam, is telling Glenn Ford that, hey man, we need you to get Mustafa. Pushing him to say negative things in order to justify an arrest. I mean, Rob Davis is telling Glenn Ford, we need you to get him off the street. I mean, last time I checked, Rob Davis was supposed to be investigating a car accident. But instead, he's sitting here talking to Glenn Ford, telling him that they have to get Mustafa off the street, that they need Glenn Ford to get him off. What does this have to do with a car accident? I mean, you're no longer investigating a car accident. Now you're actively pursuing a Mustafa Aljazairi. And by the way, we see the same thing with Tanisha Coleman. When Robert Drumm called her, he's coaching her on what to say. He's feeding her negative information, insinuating that Mustafa had intentionally crashed the car, that he had taken the life of Dorothy and Empress. And by the way, I mean, we look at Robert Drumm's conversation with Tanisha Coleman. That's not a natural conversation. You don't have a hello. This is Investigator Drumm with the Prince William Police. None of that. I mean, he calls her and he gets straight down to business, which could only mean one thing, that they had prior contact. That Tanisha Coleman and Robert Drumm spoke prior to this body cam rolling. But they want to come off like he just called her and he's just introduced. There's no introduction. As a matter of fact, he's even laughing as he's talking to her. Now, the next thing is Prosecutor Sammy is praising Detective Romero for his outstanding work with the children. Yet, I mean, we're looking at these reports. We're looking at these police reports, and none of the reports have a narrative or a police report by Romero. Not a single one. I didn't see any body cams for Romero. And according to Prosecutor Sammy, she told Judge Weimer just the other day that no one spoke to the minors other than the CAC, the Child Advocacy Center, which are trained psychologists trained to interview minors. But yet here in her report, she's praising Detective Romero for his outstanding work with the children. And what do we know about Romero? I mean, according to a conversation he had with Derek, who's Dorothy's half-brother, he records everything. He says, I record all of my conversations. So we know Sarah Sammy lied to the judge when she said that no one spoke to the minors. Because what do you know? I mean, there's a document where Sarah Sammy is calling upon a minor with the police. And they met up at the prosecutor's office. The prosecutor with the police meeting with a minor who is an alleged witness in this case. So she flat out lied to the judge when she told him that no one ever spoke to the minors other than the psychologist from the CAC. That was a lie. I mean, we have it documented. I mean, you know, you look at the alleged witnesses in this case. There's a nurse by the name of Elizabeth Lee who called in to Drumm. It's on a body cam. And Robert Drumm is flat out telling her that Mustafa did this on purpose. Okay? And when she says, well, I saw him hit the brake. I saw the brake skid. And he says, no, those weren't his skid marks. I mean, is that how you talk to a witness? Last time I checked, when police interview a witness, your job is to collect information. Instead, what you have with Robert Drumm is he's feeding a narrative to every person he comes in contact with. He's feeding this narrative that this was intentional, that he's insinuating Mustafa was under the influence. Okay, and that they have to get this guy. They have to get him no matter what. They're getting their ducks in a row before he pulls the trigger. That's what he tells a witness. I mean, imagine you call the police and you say, I was an eyewitness to an incident. And the police say, hold it right there. Before you give me your testimony, we'll just let you know that this person is a bad person. They don't deserve to be free. And it's just sad. It's sad that there's a process. It's sad that there is a system called the judicial system that we have to abide by policy and procedure and rules. I wish we could just go out and get him. And that's what he did. I mean, he falsified, went out and got Mustafa, put him in jail, and now they're reverse engineering the information in this case to make it fit the crime that they've chosen for Mustafa. And how do we know that? All you have to do is look at Kylie Clapp's interview. I mean, we know that all the minors were interviewed on April 7th, 2023, 2 days after the accident. All of the minors were present at the CAC and they spoke to the psychologist. Except for one. One interview we just can't find from April 7th. miraculously disappeared. And that was Kylie's. Kylie gets to redo her interview later, a few months later. On September 8th, 2023, the prosecutor called on Kylie to come back and redo her interview. You have an alleged witness. I mean, what? They put her out there in the world. They say, hey, go gather all the information you can. Gather all the information you can so that you can redo your interview. Because your first interview, it's not good enough. I mean, if you're going to tell us that you blocked your mom, that you had no contact with your mom, you weren't living at the apartment, you're no longer a witness in this case. Okay? So we're going to need to do a redo. What do? They send Amy Hodson. Amy Hodson, who was manufacturing probable cause against Mustafa when she called Robert Drumm. That's the same lady that was on a three-way call with Drumm and his wife. They sent Amy Hodson to reach out to this family to pretend like she's an advocate. She's an advocate for those incarcerated. I mean, at the time, Mustafa was beaten up. He had medical concerns. He was being abused. He's looking for a lawyer. And this lady comes out of nowhere and says, I'm an advocate. I can help you. But I need to find out what this story is. I need to get more information from you. I mean, you know, we're nice people. We tell her the whole story. We tell her how Drumm lied and how Mustafa was beaten in jail and what the police have done to these kids, how they've coached them. We've given her that information. We told her the whole story. And what does Amy Hodson do? By the way, she doesn't come out as Amy Hodson. She pretends to be another person. She pretends to be a Christine Aljazairi. I mean, she stole someone's identity from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, pretending to be someone else, only to insert herself into this case and gather as much information as possible so that she can feed it to Kylie just prior to her CAC second interview with the Child Advocacy Center. In the hopes that Kylie could be a better witness. And, you know, newsflash, she didn't do any better. I think she made it only worse. Because in that September 8th interview, she pretty much tells you that the only reason I'm here is because my dad's making me come here. I was never there. I blocked my mom. I didn't live there. She basically disqualifies herself. Given all the information that Amy Hodson was able to obtain from this case, Kylie still flopped the interview. She still failed. Now, one thing that's really concerning about Amy Hodson's conversation with Drumm is that she tells Drumm flat out. She says, I don't know Mustafa. I don't know Dorothy. I don't even know the kids. I don't even know Kylie. I don't know any of them. But I heard that the ex-husband was planning on harming Dorothy. That's what she says to Drumm. And Drumm, well, I mean, what does he do? When she says ex-husband, Drumm is writing down Mustafa. Every time Amy Hodson tells him that the ex-husband, the father, would abuse these kids, the ex-husband is coming after this woman, Drumm is sitting there and he's writing Mustafa every time. Mustafa's not the father. He's not the ex-husband. He's not the ex-boyfriend. Yet Drumm is taking these accusations and he's putting it down as Mustafa. And that's a problem because Robert Drumm is the one who testified to the grand jury. And it's pretty obvious that Robert Drumm testified that anything that was ex-husband, anything that was husband related, anything that was father related abuse, he put it down as Mustafa. I mean, Mustafa had only known Dorothy for 3 months at the time. 3 months. 3 months. And Robert Drumm wants to tell us that Mustafa abused these kids. Mustafa was abusing Dorothy. And Robert Drumm knows very well what was inside that apartment. He knows there was a Google Nest, a camera that was constantly recording. He knows there were light bulb cameras. And I say he knows because Drumm and Davis gave the key to the apartment to Kylie. I mean, just imagine that. The primary investigators on this case took the key to the apartment, which they're alleging is a crime scene. Okay, they're alleging this is a crime scene. They took the key and they gave it to Kylie and the ex-boyfriend. How do we know that? Well, we know that because Glenn Ford was pawning off all of Dorothy's items. And the police got a hold of his pawn slips. He was using a false address. So ex-boyfriend and Kylie not on the lease, yet the police give them the key to the apartment. And they take everything and pawn it off. Cameras, evidence, who cares? They've already had their guy. I mean, Mustafa was going to be framed for this one way or another. So who cares? Evidence, they don't need it. Now, one of the biggest pieces of this case, which is my 6th point here, is that the police took Mustafa's vehicle, they staged and crushed it at the police impound. I mean, what's going on with his car? Mustafa's car was chopped up at the police impound. They cut it in specific areas to make it look like this was a head-on collision. And the reason why I say that is because recently the prosecutor told the judge that she wants to take the jury to show them the vehicle at the police impound lot. I mean, they've cut off the roof. They've cut off the driver and passenger fender. They've dented the driver door frame and the passenger door frame. And the car looks unrecognizable. Okay. Now, what did they tell the first lawyer, Casey Stevens, about why the car is missing the roof? Why the car has these extra cuts on the fenders, on the driver door frame? They told him it was due to extraction. It was due to rescue efforts. That's what they said. Extraction and rescue efforts. They told the lawyer that the reason why the car looks like this is because we were rescuing the passengers. That this was done on the scene of the accident. And guess what? Casey Stevens, he went along with it. Now, had we not taken the images from the news media and saved them from that initial report, who would know what the car looks like? Who would know what the car looked like at the time, after the fact? You wouldn't know. You just have to take their word for it. Now, when Amar stole the file, you can clearly see the car was still full intact at the police impound. So you can't tell me they transported the car with the passengers to the police impound. That's impossible. Okay? And it's very clear that the fire department came out to the police impound days later and they began chopping up at the car. Now, I mean, you're going to lie to us initially and say it was due to rescue efforts. Now you want to tell us that it was because you were extracting the data recorder that sits right behind the shifter. Well, if we look at Mustafa's car, his car was T-boned from the rear. When your car is T-boned from the rear side, your dash is not just going to cave in. I mean, it just doesn't happen. I've never heard of someone getting rear-ended and they need a new bumper in the front, or they need a new hood in the front, or they need a new driver fender when the rear passenger side got hit. It just doesn't make any sense. Okay? If someone rear ends you, you don't go to your insurance and you say, oh, I need a brand new dash because my dash caved in when my car was T-boned from the rear. It just doesn't make sense. Okay? But now that we've got the full picture, they want to tell us that it was because they're extracting the EDR. My question to the police department is, did you also crush the Chevy Suburban to get the EDR? I mean, that car was hit from the front. The front end of that car is almost gone. Did you crush and stage the Suburban as well? And the answer is no, because we can clearly see photos of the Suburban at the impound. Still has its roof, still has all its doors, still has everything as if it was on the scene. They didn't tamper with that car because why would they? It doesn't matter. The whole purpose is that they wanted Mustafa's car to look like it was hit from the front. They want Mustafa's car to show that he hit the Suburban, when in fact, she T-boned him. She crashed into the rear side of his car. Now, if I didn't know any better, if your car is hit from the rear side, that sure sounds like you were trying to avoid a car accident. Otherwise, I mean, if you're going to crash your car, you're going to make sure the front of your car hits the intended target. But if your car was hit, doesn't support the narrative that the police are going with. So what do? They say the evidence doesn't look good for them. So let's make it a big giant mess. Let's chop up his roof. Let's cut his fenders. Let's bend both his door frames. And let's just say that this was a head-on collision. I mean, now you want to take the jury to the car and show them the car. You know, your own chief of police doesn't believe this is the same car. There's a video where I confront him and I ask him, I said, this is what your officers did to my brother's car. And he says, that's not even the same car. I don't believe it. That's not the same car. By the way, you can check out the video. It's got like almost 1 million views. Chief of Police Newsham says that's not the same car. Well, Chief, you might want to look into this car and what your officers did to it, because it's not looking good. It's not looking good for the police to take a piece of evidence, crush it, and stage it to make it look like something else. It doesn't look good. Now, the other issue we're having with this car is Mustafa hired an independent expert to examine this car, which, I mean, I'm going to say it right now. You can hire all the independent experts in the world. You're never going to bring that car back to what it was when the police inspected it, because that's something that they have taken away from Mustafa. Mustafa should be entitled to bring in an expert, examine that car the same way Robert Drumm examined that car on the scene. But they took that away. That's his right. It's his constitutional right to examine the evidence the same way the government does. But they have taken that away. They've taken it away. It's illegal to take evidence and destroy it. If you get the best independent expert, he's going to tell you, what am I looking at here? The police have already chopped it up. I mean, if I scan this car today, it's going to say, this is a head-on collision. But if you look at the scan from prior to cutting this vehicle, it's going to say this car was T-boned. So essentially, the Prince William County Police have simply changed this entire accident from a T-bone to a head-on collision by cutting his vehicle up. And honestly, when you destroy evidence, you just took a shit on yourself, because you can no longer take that person to trial. You've destroyed the evidence. You have destroyed the evidence. And there's no going back from that. You can't go back and rebuild that car the same way when you first initially examined it. When it initially was on the scene of, according to you, a crime. I mean, you want to prosecute a man based on what? Evidence? Well, where's the evidence? Oh, you destroyed it. Well, how is he supposed to formulate a defense to evidence that you've destroyed? You know, and like, I wish I could say this is like a one-off, but it's not a one-off. You've also tampered with his dash camera. What does Kathy Zymis with Digital Forensics tell us? She tells us that the moment she gets digital evidence, what does she do? She makes a mirror image copy of it, so that to preserve the integrity of the original evidence, she makes a mirror image copy of it. So that in case the defendant wants to claim, you've tampered with my evidence, you've tampered with my dash cam, she's going to say, no, I made a copy of it. Your evidence is still where it is. It's still exactly how it was. But we can't say that in Mustafa's case, because Chad Mason, if you remember from the last podcast, Chad Mason, remember specifically, he grabbed it with his right hands, took it out of the windshield, plugged it into his laptop, manipulated the files for 4 hours, and then brought it back and stuck it on the windshield. And it's not until April 24th that Kathy Zymis gets this dash camera. But in the meantime, from April 7th to the 24th, I mean, Chad Mason and Robert Drumm were just going at it. They were just in and out of this dash camera. No warrant, who cares? It's Mustafa. Who cares? It's just a Mustafa. He's going to be guilty no matter what. We can tamper with his evidence. We don't have to follow policy and procedure. And they didn't. So therefore, you've already ruined his car, which is the primary piece of evidence. And then you ruined his dash camera. I mean, we can go on and on. You've taken his cell phone data and you've concealed it, which, by the way, has the Google Nest. So you've taken that piece of evidence and you've tampered with it. You took the apartment that had light bulb cameras that were constantly recording, and you gave the key to the ex-boyfriend, only to pawn it off at the pawn shop. I mean, again, this is not a one-off. You know, when you constantly violate department policy, when you're constantly ignoring the procedure set by your department in order to get one man, you're going to go above and beyond to get this one man at all costs, no matter what it takes. Chad Mason violating chain of custody, that's okay. Robert Drumm lying to a magistrate, that's okay. Rob Davis chopping up Mustafa's vehicle, that's okay. Rob Sermon openly admitting to pumping money into this case, that's okay. Children being abused and weaponized by the police department, by Romero, that's okay. I mean, should we go on? Prosecutor lying to the judge, that's okay. Violating Mustafa's rights, Sarah Sami telling a judge in Mustafa's bond hearing that Mustafa gave someone brain injury, lying about what the witnesses actually said, that's okay. I mean, you know, eventually it's going to catch up to you. Eventually, people are going to wake up to a realization that the Prince William County Police are probably not just doing that with Mustafa's case. You want to bet that these officers have been doing this for a long time, and this is their standard operating procedure for every case? I mean, we don't have to look far to see when Drumm and Vaco were in a trial together and how they manipulated EDR from a different case, and they made a deal with the lawyer that no one's going to contest this information. You know, I'll give you a hint. It's Martinez. You know, we're reading into your files. We're going through your files, and it's not looking good for you because it looks like you've got some prior experience. But the only difference is, Martinez didn't have someone to speak out for him. He was all alone. So, you know, going back to this EDR, this electronic data recorder, Robert Drumm wrote up a whole entire warrant about what happened that day, specifically the EDR. Now, I want to give you the facts of the EDR, okay, between the Chrysler. I mean, this is a collision between two vehicles, okay? It's a collision between two vehicles. Mustafa's Chrysler 300 and a Chevy Suburban. Now, the Suburban made contact with the rear fender of the Chrysler 300. Mustafa was attempting to avoid a vehicle accident, and the Chevy Suburban ran into the side of his car. Now let's look at simply EDR. Let's just look at data that has no emotions. It's just numbers. So no matter how you take this case, no matter how you look at this case, the numbers don't change. Let's look at braking. Was the Chevy Suburban on the brakes? And the answer is no. She never hit the brake. So that's a minus for the Suburban. Was Mustafa hitting the brake? Yes, his EDR shows that for the entire duration that the computer records, Mustafa was on the brake the entire time. So how could Robert Drumm tell us? How could he specifically say Mustafa made no evasive maneuvers to avoid an accident? How could you say that when Mustafa's on the brake and the Chevy Suburban never hit the brake? How? Let's look at steering angles. Okay? Mustafa's car was hit from the rear passenger side. So if a car is oncoming, where would you expect his steering wheel to be? I would say counterclockwise, away from the car. And that's exactly what Mustafa's data recorder shows. He was steering away from the car. Now let's look at the Suburban. Where was the steering wheel on the Suburban? We don't know. Why don't we know? Oh, because Robert Drumm concealed it. Robert Drumm specifically made sure not to show what the steering angle was for the Chevy Suburban. Wait a second, I thought this was a car accident. A car accident between two vehicles? So you look at, primarily three things. Gas pedal, brake pedal, and steering angle. Three things. I mean, she agrees. Why is the steering...
Could you try again?
Why is the steering angle missing from the Chevy Suburban? Why? Where is it? Did it just walk away? I mean, we know what Drumm said on the scene. He says, oh, she must have turned into him. She must have turned into him. I mean, how bad would it look if the data recorder is released and it shows the Suburban was turning into Mustafa and Mustafa was turning away? That doesn't follow the narrative. That doesn't look good for the police department. It doesn't look good for the prosecutor's case. So what do? Let's just cross it out. Let's just pretend like a 2013 Chevy Suburban does not record steering angle. 2013, yet a 2007 Chrysler 300, 2007, 5 years older than the Suburban, has that information. Come on now. Let's look at speed. Let's look at speed. The Chevy Suburban was on cruise control and going 13 miles per hour over the speed limit. 13 miles an hour over the speed limit. 13. Imagine that. So 13 miles an hour over the speed limit in a 5-second window, never hitting the brake. What does that mean? Well, if I didn't know any better, I would say for 5 seconds, that driver did not look forward. For 5 seconds. Let's give the general time of reaction is 1 second. So for 4 seconds, that driver never looked forward. Think about that. Think about that. You're going 13 miles an hour over the speed limit. You have it on cruise control. And for 5 seconds, you never looked forward. You never looked past your windshield. I would say if you're not looking forward, you must be on your cell phone. Did the police examine whether this driver was on her cell phone? Why would they? I told you from the beginning. The moment police arrived and they identified Mustafa Aljazairi as the driver, he was guilty. There was nothing else to look at. The whole looking at the EDR, looking at the dash cam, looking at this, this is just like extras. They were going to find him guilty no matter what. I'm literally reading a warrant where Robert Drumm says Mustafa did not make any evasive action. Mustafa did not take any evasive action to avoid a vehicle accident. And I just read to you that he steered away, he was not speeding, and he was on the brake the entire time. And I just showed you the other driver was on cruise control. Did not look past her windshield for 5 seconds. She was speeding and she never hit the brake and she turned into him. She turned into his vehicle. And Drumm wants to tell us, oh, that driver, the guy that's hitting the brake, the guy that's maneuvering the car between all these oncoming cars, that guy did not make any evasive action. He did not take any evasive action. But the other driver, oh, she's good. And by the way, I'm not being sarcastic. Rob Davis went to that driver and told her, ma'am, you're good. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about nothing. As long as you stick to your original story, which by the way, I'm still waiting. What is her original story? Because apparently they never took a statement. They never took a statement. So what is her original story? And where was this conversation? Where did this conversation take place between the police and the other driver if it's not written down anywhere? Where did they talk to this other driver? What is her original story? We don't know. Nobody knows what her original story is. But Rob Davis tells her, as long as you stick to your original story, ma'am, you've got nothing to worry about. And you know what's even more disturbing? They call this a double homicide. Now, if Mustafa was going to get a independent expert, we've already established that Mustafa's expert will never be able to scan his car. He's never going to be able to examine Mustafa's Chrysler 300. That's never going to happen because the police, they've destroyed it. That's just not going to happen. Okay? It's just not going to happen. Now, again, they're alleging a double homicide on this case. Okay? So, why did Rob Davis go into an alleged double homicide crime scene and remove evidence from the scene of the crime? I mean, what am I talking about here? He went to that woman's car and he removed a giant rosary bead off the rear view mirror. According to you, officer, this is a crime scene. According to you, you're still investigating. According to you, you are still investigating this crime. Why would an officer go in and remove evidence from the crime scene? I mean, you know, either you want us to be serious about this investigation or you're telling us, it's not really an investigation. This is not a crime scene. I mean, you've given the key to the apartment to a minor that doesn't live there, not on the lease. You gave her the key. You went into a vehicle and removed the rosary beads. You removed evidence from the scene. I mean, if Mustafa's expert was going to go into this impound and he's going to examine the other vehicle, just like the judge says, you're entitled, Mustafa, to examine both vehicles. But we've already established you've destroyed his car. That's out of the question. Now, if his expert is going to examine the Chevy Suburban, something's going to be missing from that report because an expert is going to examine everything, all possibilities. Was the driver distracted? Was there something obstructing her view? Oh, well, we don't know because Rob Davis went in and he removed it. Something that was there before the accident that today is missing. Evidence missing. Evidence tampering. Oh, that's what it is. It's a whole category. It's called evidence tampering. Rob Davis tampered with the evidence. I mean, you know, again, Chief of Police, Amy Ashworth, you're going to tell me these are just minor things, but, you know, minor things can add up. You've destroyed his car. You've tampered with his dash camera. You allege this is a double homicide, yet you're giving the apartment key. You're giving the scene of the crime key to a minor that's not on the lease, that doesn't live there, that tells you, I have no contact with my mom, yet you gave her the key to the apartment before inspecting the apartment? I mean, wouldn't you want to go into the scene of the crime to document? No? Okay. So you're not going to document? Wouldn't you want to ensure that the scene is left preserved so that when the jury looks at it, they're looking at a preserved scene? Oh, it doesn't matter. Okay. I mean, oh, you want to create a new scene for the jury. You want to destroy his car and then bring the jury. You want to remove the rosary beads. You want to remove pieces of evidence from the scene, and then you want to bring in the jury. Okay, I think that's called staging the scene. That's what you're doing. You're staging the scene. So I think we can really conclude that you're not taking this investigation seriously. You're not really investigating this whole scene, this whole case. Because, I mean, based on what I'm looking at so far, you're not taking it seriously. You're removing items from the scene. You're damaging his car. You're chopping it up. I mean, when was the last time you heard police say, we have a piece of evidence, but we destroyed it? We have a piece of evidence. I mean, the whole thing of preservation of evidence is so that you can show the jury, so that they can be in that moment, so they can be there when this event occurred. But I mean, not in this case, because apparently you're not taking it seriously. So that's where we're at. You know, we're gonna get into the Google Nest. We've got a lot to go over. The bond hearing and the lies with Jason Nance. We're gonna talk about how the children were coached prior to their interview. According to the children, I mean, they tell you, we were told by the police that Mustafa fled the scene. Yet we're looking at body cams where police took Mustafa to the hospital and interrogated him, and then Chad Mason signed off on his release from the hospital. Chad Mason signed off. He said, yeah, you can go ahead and discharge him to his mom who's waiting out there. We're done interrogating him. We've milked him. We've got all we wanted. Okay. We're going to talk about Prosecutor Sammy, and how she has a pattern of lying. There's many things that she's lying about. And we're just going to wrap it up here. We'll continue. We'll pick up right where we left off. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you for being here. This is the Unredacted Files podcast. And Sarah Sammy, Chief Newsham, I think we're going to get to know each other very well in the coming days. We're going to know what your standards are. We're going to know how the police likes to handle evidence. We're going to know how the prosecutor likes to lie. And then when she's caught in the lie, she's going to switch up her narrative. You know, we're going to get to all that. So thank you for joining. This is the Unredacted Files podcast. And I guarantee you in the coming days, these categories that I talked about today, whether you think I'm giving opinion or not, tune in to the Not Another Boring podcast, who's going to hammer these points home. Okay, he's got his tablet, he's got his exhibits. So everything I said here is purely based in fact. Nothing's opinion based here, by the way. I'm not going to give you my opinion. If I have an opinion, I will tell you flat out, this is my opinion. So far, what I've read to you is simply facts. Facts based on testimony, based on transcript, and also based on body cam. By the way, information that otherwise we wouldn't be able to talk about had Amar not gracefully stole the file from the county. So thank you, Amar. Keep doing what you're doing.